Welcome to the podcast of St. Basil the Great in Brecksville, Ohio, with homilies, talks, and interviews relevant to your Catholic life. God bless you and enjoy. Welcome back to the St. Basil podcast. We are very excited to have home from pilgrimage Father Jeffrey Liptak here with us today to just kind of share some of the stories, some of the graces of your pilgrimage. And on your pilgrimage, you guys went to mainly like Assisi and Rome, but you were traveling with the choir,
Correct.
Hearing them sing, and we'll get Stephanie and Gregory's take later on. But we wanted to hear from you today, just some of the joys and graces, and I haven't even heard all your stories yet, so I'm actually very excited
Correct.
to hear all about it too. So,
No, I'm still very much processing this trip that we went on. And in a certain way, I use the word trip, but yeah, you're right. We went on a pilgrimage. And it's always mindful, and I was reminded of this early on.
yeah,
As many of you heard, yes, this is not a vacation, and we weren't tourists, but it is a pilgrimage, which means we're on a journey to encounter God in an extraordinary way and place. And I'm always reminded in that one Eucharistic prayer, the first one, your pilgrim church on earth. So the idea of like we're always, all of us, the Church Universalists, we're on a pilgrimage. And it's always a journey to encountering God in this way. For our trip, it was to encounter him in, like you said, the places of Rome, Assisi, and Florence, and a couple other stops we took. So it felt like a pilgrimage right out of the gates.
Yeah.
Because we got delays in Cleveland, and then we got delays in O'Hare, and that led to canceled flights. And, there was a lot of heartache because we wanted nothing more than to get to our destination. And that waiting and the frustration, I mean, it was real. It was palpable. But how the good Lord used all that to prepare us, I think, for things he knew he had stored for us. So no, it was definitely a rough and not ideal start. And O'Hare Airport definitely felt like purgatory, at the very least.
Yeah. When you got a flight that's canceled or delayed, well, when it gets delayed and then canceled,
Right.
Purgatory is probably the best, the best way I could think of an airport.
Yes, a lot of purifying things happened in that airport. But no, to your point, it was good. And then we ultimately had to get scattered through multiple different cities and airports to even get to Assisi, which was our first stop. And we're supposed to have 2.5 days there, and we really had, the majority of us only had a morning and an afternoon before we head on, and even part of our group actually never even made it to Assisi. So I think how the Lord saw all that, and even Francis, and I remember just telling them that, and this still kind of like struck me, the things that we sometimes say like, oh, wow, that's really true, which was the saints aren't waiting for us in crypts. The saints are not waiting for us in the relics and basilicas and churches. The saints desire to be walking with us, to walk with the living, not just to be in places of the dead. And it was just quickly, I felt that in my heart as Francis was with us at O'Hare Airport. And Francis, as we continue to talk, we're going to see he was throughout the entirety of our pilgrimage in different places. So always a reminder that God's grace, while we might have expectations and desires and like, Lord, I want it to work this way, that's not always his will. And I think for us to be reminded on this pilgrimage very quickly, God's will be done. And when it happens, truly we all walked away encountering God and St. Francis in a very special and unique way that none of us will ever forget.
That's so amazing. And yeah, having St. Francis of Assisi kind of as a guide of like, I want to come see you so bad. And he's, maybe saying to you, to some of the pilgrims, especially the ones that didn't make it there, I'm sure I'm in Assisi, but I'm with you always. I'm walking with you always. And
Correct.
Getting to see and like really bring that to light in a new way is such a cool experience. So how did he show up later in the trip?
So after we did Assisi, and we finally got to our next destination was Florence, and that's when all of us were there. And the first Mass that the choir actually was able to sing at as a full group was at Santa Maria Novella. And it is this basilica that is in Florence, and I wasn't the presider. Their priest presided. It was a Dominican priest. Beautiful man. But it was so cool to be in that massive basilica and to hear our choir sing. It truly just changed how I understood music and liturgy and what it does and how it meant to really elevate our hearts and our minds. And what I mean in a particular way was every time the choir stopped singing, you heard their voices just reverberate and echo throughout the entire basilica. And it was just this constant reminder that even after we're done singing or after we're done praying, that the voices and the noise and the prayer, it continues to go away from us. And again, almost to wrap us in that reality, kind of like God's voice, it goes out and it does not come back unfulfilled and return to Him. So just that beauty of hearing the choir's voice in that sacred space, which was truly transforming. And it was truly not only a gift for me to receive from the choir, but then any person that was there that day, there was a couple hundred people that got to experience St. Basil the Great in Brecksville, Ohio, coming all the way to Florence to sing. And no, they left everyone's hearts just very stirred and moved, just through their self-gift.
Yeah. Well, I think there's been a few times, so St. Basil is not necessarily architecturally built for that kind of reverberating sound that you can get in one of those huge basilicas in Italy, or, maybe even the cathedral downtown kind of has those qualities, but sometimes not even quite.
No,
but there's been a few times at St. Basil that I really feel like you have heard that like reverberations right when the song ends. And reflecting on it before, I know Stephanie has said, she's like, it just feels like the angels are continuing to sing with us. And that's like how, we can when the music is so beautiful and it reverberates like that, and you really like take a moment to, take a deep breath and actually pray through the music, which I feel like is something you probably really got to do a lot on the trip, because like, you're with the choir, so music is really kind of at the forefront of, a lot of the things you're doing. Like, you're able to sit and pray and like realize how close heaven is and how thin the veil is, and how beautiful it is to realize that when we are singing at Mass, we are quite literally always uniting with the angels and saints, singing God's praises through all eternity.
Correct. Well, and even to your point, when the beauty of the choir's voice matches with the structural architecture of a basilica, like, you're right, you get the full effect in a very beautiful way. But to your point also, to be wrapped around the music, we definitely saw that the next day, which, we were supposed to be in Assisi on Wednesday, and we didn't really have a full group mass that I presided at until Sunday. And we were supposed to be at the Basilica of St. Lawrence. So I thought, like, great, another big church. I'll be the presider at. We get there, and then they take us downstairs into the basement. And it was this very low ceiling. It was almost like it had this crypt feeling. And to your point, the beauty of singing in that space with 50 people, you felt very wrapped by their voices and the music, and it had its own beautiful feeling. What was so unique about that space, though, is it was the chapel of St. Francis of Assisi's Stigmata.
There we go.
So there's that first pull into St. Francis. And when I got down there, I'm like, really, Lord, we're in the basement. And then I see the high altar that I'll be at, and there's this massive painting of St. Francis with the Stigmata. And I just couldn't help but say, thank you, Lord, your ways are better than mine. And just to be reminded of that in that beautiful space, which was St. Francis. He started with us at the very beginning at O'Hare, and he's going to continue to walk with us. And what was so good about that Mass, and the choir couldn't see this because their backs were to the entrance we walked in, but I could see it. And as I was facing them, we had to come down steps to get into this chapel, and there was a gate and some doors. Well, they left the doors open, but they closed the gate. So it's Sunday Mass, they're singing the Gloria, which it is just booming. And I can see out of the corner of my eye that there are people pressing on the gate with their cell phones pushed through the gate to record the choir. And there was this big courtyard right outside, so I can only imagine how their voices not only just filled that space, but kind of rolled into that courtyard where it's just like, what is going on down there? And people just being drawn by the beauty of our choir singing and the sacredness of the Mass. Like, it's meant to draw people, and they want to know more and see more and experience more. So it was just a really beautiful experience of how the Lord just wants to sometimes take the littleness and maybe what we would think like really these small places, but then he gets to magnify them for people in Florence to be able to experience real beauty.
Yeah. That's so cool. And also just like a little cool thing that, they don't even know. Like, you don't even realize how great your gift of music is sometimes. And being able to, just kind of go back to like one of those just big questions of life of like, what is that? Like, what is going on? Like, do I want to be a part of that? Do I want more?
Yeah.
And the evangelization that beautiful Gloria probably brought people is just an incredible gift.
Absolutely. And then, gosh, as the day unfolded, we went to the Academia, where we got to see the statue of David. And you can look at pictures online of it, but until you see it in person, you just don't realize how truly impressive it was. And
it is.
I didn't appreciate the backstory that my sister shared with me, which was the original sculptor was way before Michelangelo. And he went up into the mountains, he cut this massive stone, and it took 2 years for the stone to get from the mountain to the city of Florence. And once it got there, everybody from the town and the government officials came out, and they were just stunned at how terrible of a piece of marble it was. Oh. And they said to the sculptor, who had no idea how to mine, like, you cannot use this. We won't let you use this. He actually got fired. So they took this massive, multiple tons of this marble and threw it behind a church. Until I think it was about 100 years later, Michelangelo finds it and he says, I will use it. So the very statue of David that we were looking at is actually a flawed piece of marble. So you're blown away by how immaculate, how any person could have done this, but then to also realize as you're looking at beautiful art, that he did it with a flawed piece of marble. And isn't that what the Lord does with each and every one of us? We're broken, we're imperfect, we have flaws and cracks, and the Lord takes this and says, I will make a masterpiece with your life. And I think that's always the good thing to never lose sight of. When we look at art, what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to become a reflection and a mirror within us of what God wants to do on a greater scale. So seeing the statue of David was just really another good experience of what God wants to do, not just with marble, but with actually the flesh and the stories of our own lives.
Yeah. That's such a cool story. And part of me is like, have I heard that story before? But I don't think I've heard that story before. But sometimes when you're on those tours, they tell you those stories. And
correct.
Unfortunately, like every once in a while, like some of those cool stories go in one ear and out the other.
Right.
But when you really have a moment to think about it and realize, like, not only it's a flawed piece of marble, but then in a pilgrimage mindset, like in a pilgrim mindset, to take in like, okay, if this beautiful creation was created out of a flawed piece of marble, like what does the Lord do with me? And that's like one of the big differences between a pilgrimage and a trip. Like when I went to Florence, I went when I was studying abroad. So it was very much a trip. Like we were having fun. Like, of course, we needed to go see the David and some other things. And it was actually like a part of my class. So I was like studying it, but I was not like thinking about it in terms of that, like, right. And really like bringing into not only, like, okay, if it's a flawed piece of marble, Lord, what can you do with me? But all of those moments leading up to it of like, I'm very like, I can imagine that maybe some people might have felt this way. I'm not putting words in people's mouths, but you can imagine, like, Lord, like, I know I'm flawed. I know how I was feeling when we were stuck in Chicago forever, and I was really, really frustrated getting out here. But now I'm here, and I'm realizing, like, my flaws, but I'm seeing what you can do with flaws and make a miracle in me, make something exquisite and amazing out of me.
Yeah.
And like then taking that prayer through the rest of the stops on the pilgrimage. I mean, that could have been such a beautiful, beautiful thing to pray with.
Yeah, no, and then that truly is the gift when you do go on pilgrimage, and you just see the stories of just what they have there that we don't have here. It's just all that history and all of that architecture, and it just speaks. And again, like a certain way, those people go past it every single day. They don't think twice about it. So there does require that ability to stop, to integrate, to be able to receive this, and then to your point, to really do that work, to be like, to pray with it. And then that's, I think, where so much of our secular world falls short is they study the artisan, they study the art, and it's just, measurements and this, and they fail to see really the glory that all art is supposed to do, which is to point us beyond the physical world, and that really is at the heart of the Mass.
Yeah, yeah. And so where did you guys go after Florence?
Well, the last thing I want to mention about Florence,
yeah.
It's a very secular city. Like it's a very business.
It's very academic
yes,
too.
Without a doubt.
Like a lot of universities.
Correct, and there's not like churches everywhere, but one of the most beautiful ones is the Duomo, which is like really at the heart of the city, and you're blown away when you're standing at the doors, and you have to like look all the way up to see the height of it, and you just get the overwhelming impression of the church. That it's surrounded by this secular culture, and yet what does secularism see but this beautiful church that's meant to glorify God, and that says, we've been here for 2,000 years, we're still going to be here, and we're going to continue to be here. So bring us your culture, and we will show you what God can do, always to transform it. And that's what that Duomo, when you look at it, it's one of the biggest domes in the world. But again, it's just a testament to like what God can do with our cooperation always.
Well, I think that's so true, and I know it's not the same Duomo, but we just had the Milan Olympic Winter Games.
Yeah.
And even in like so much of the coverage of the games, like when it was like, okay, like we gotta, like play some like elevator music, like holding music or whatever, they would show like pictures and like scenes of like the
it was Santa Croce,
whatever, but the Duomo in Milan.
Yeah.
Not only did they show off, here's the ski slopes that everyone's going down and, some big aerial views of the city, but it was so much of the Duomo.
Yeah.
And so that really is so true. Like, it's the center of our city, and we're very proud of it, and we're blessed that it's here. And that being the center, like, sends blessings out to the whole world even.
Well, and to your point also, it's a beautiful testament of just God will always endure our ways. He will always endure our cultures because he always gets the final say. And that always is just another testament of God, using the littleness of our creation to always draw people, again, back into his presence. So, no, Florence was a beautiful city. I would go back there in a heartbeat. But then from Florence, we went to Orvieto, which was, I think, per the whole entire group, our favorite stop, from what a lot of people said. Orvieto is where the Eucharistic miracle had happened, just in a town outside of it, but it was brought to Orvieto, and it was a corporal just soaked in the blood of Christ. The priest was saying Mass, and he was doubting the real presence, and during the Mass, when he said, "This is my body," the words that Christ said, him staying in the person of Christ, his hands and everything was just covered in blood. So he wrapped everything up, ran to Orvieto, and this was the Eucharistic miracle that happened. It wasn't the first one, but it'd be the one that the Pope actually commissioned St. Thomas Aquinas to give us the prayers and hymns of the Feast of Corpus Christi.
Wow.
Yeah. So what was beautiful is when we were in Orvieto, we got to celebrate Mass there, and they opened up the Eucharistic miracle for us.
Wow.
So it was very privileged because John Paul II actually celebrated Mass there as well. So just realizing that so many good and holy heroes of mine celebrated Mass there. But again, that great reminder that right behind me is this Eucharistic miracle, the corporal still soaked in blood, and here's me at the altar. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, like, yes, this was a wonderful miracle. It was a physical miracle, but really the miracle that happens for all of us to constantly receive, it's always at the altar.
Yeah.
And that is the living miracle, Jesus Christ himself, who wants to encounter your life in that personal way. And it was truly one of those masses I would love to relive and for the rest of my life. And especially also my mom was there. So she actually, after the prayer after communion, she did a hymn in that chapel. And it was just another one of those experiences where everybody who was in the church came to the side and was taking out their phones and recording, because God's beauty is meant to just reverberate wherever we go. So it was an awesome experience.
That sounds so amazing. Oh, now I'm like, oh man, I wish I went. Like when you guys were stuck in Chicago, I was like, I'm glad I didn't. But I'm like, wow, that is such a beautiful, that's one of the places I haven't been in Italy, and I would love to go.
I would go back to Orvieto in a heartbeat. It is like your picturesque small Italian town that was on part of a mountain. And it was just quiet, and it was peaceful, and I think it was really that point in our journey where everybody could just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And it gave us that reprieve. And it was a quick afternoon stop, so we went all the way up there, had mass, walked around, and then we got back on the bus before we head to Rome.
Yeah, and then in Rome, you guys had lots of fun.
Oh my goodness, Rome! I love Rome. It is one of my. Not everybody loves Rome. It's another one of those busy, chaotic.
I love Rome.
It's sprawling. It's massive, but there's churches everywhere. And the first thing we did is we went to the Sistine Chapel and the Vatican Museum. We had a tour there when we got there, and I was just really struck by the Sistine Chapel. I've seen it a couple times, but on the ceiling, you see all of really salvation history and creation, and it's just beautiful paintings. But it was the final judgment. It really just, I think, drew us all in, which is Christ and with Mary at his side. And it was just that closeness that the Lord desires to draw us into his side, and really understanding, like, Mary wants us to be where she is in that painting as well, to always be nearer to her, nearer to the church, and always nearer to her son, Jesus Christ. And you really got that Eucharistic image, again, just so beautifully painted out in that Sistine Chapel. So and it was a great experience, too, because we got to pray in there, too, to really soak in this very sacred space, but never losing sight of, as great as the images are, the miracles were the ones that were actually in the chapel staring up at everything.
Wow, that was a very eloquent way of saying that. I was gonna say something else, and as you were finishing, I'm like actually listening to the words you were saying. I'm like, wow, yeah, the miracles are us, those that are, sitting in the chapel. Well, not me, but those are. I mean, I guess you're calling me a miracle, so thank you. But yeah, those that are sitting in the chapel looking up at it, and what a gift that is to just kind of reflect on that. That not only, the flawed piece of marble, the beautiful paintings, but also you, me, us. Yeah.
And then the next day we got to celebrate Mass at St. Peter's. So many people just expressed this. It was like coming home. Yes, it's one of the biggest churches. It is the biggest church in the world, but what really inspires you when you walk into St. Peter's is just the extent that all people from all over the world are coming to this church. And ways they're on their own pilgrimages, they're there to pray, or maybe Italians, and this is just down the street for them, so them to be able to experience St. Peter's in a very normal way for them. But I was invited to concelebrate Mass. No, I don't know Italian, so I did the Mass concelebrate in English under my breath. But it was just, you realize when we hear God's scattered church throughout the world. And as I'm behind the altar and I'm seeing all these different people, it is just, you realize God's desire for us to be one family, always in his home, like that experience of heaven on earth. And it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience to have Mass at St. Peter's, but to also be there with your choir. So you get a little home in St. Peter's, and you just, once again, you get to just experience what we're longing for. Not just a pilgrimage on this earth, but the one that is leading us towards our final destination. And we get these little experiences to get us ready for that big one.
Yeah. That is one of the things that I'm like, that is just so amazing. And we both went to Walsh, and the Walsh University choir will go and sing in St. Peter's every once in a while. And I remember like hearing them doing that, and I'm like, that's so cool. And then when I heard that the St. Basil choir was going to go do it, I'm like, that is such an incredible, like, once in a lifetime opportunity of like being able to sing in St. Peter's, in the mother home of the church, and just get to experience that. And I feel like I would have been lost for words. Like, I'm lost for words thinking about it, but like being there, being a part of it, having that piece of home in the middle of, I mean, it is the Mother Church of Rome.
Correct.
Like, you know, that is our home, but having that like real tangible piece of home.
Correct.
It has to have been just incredible.
No, it was a very grace-filled experience. And again, we experienced that here at St. Basil the Great, because those two are not mutually exclusive to one another. It's like, well, what experience there flows to here. So at every altar, we are all always joined together. That's why, in a certain way, even if you weren't there physically with us, you were always there in spirit with us, because that is the church, that we may always be one, always singing together in all of our different languages, but still the one same Holy Mass.
Yeah, that really is. It's very true.
Yeah. And the one thing that shocked me about the trip, the one thing people were really stunned by in Rome was when we got to visit the catacombs.
Oh.
Everybody had a very moving experience in the catacombs. And every time I go to Rome, I love going to the catacombs, just to see where our early brothers and sisters were buried in a certain way, to have that real connection with them, not just with volcanic ash, but to know that, like, oh, this is where our brothers and sisters have gone before us, marked with the sign of faith. And again, I keep bringing it back to the Eucharistic prayers, but we reference them specifically in each of the 4 Eucharistic prayers. And you just realize how we are always united with not just the living at Mass, but with the dead. They're there with us, and they're interceding for us, and we're praying for them. So it's like, again, it's God's one big happy family, the ones we can see and the ones on the other side of the veil. So the catacombs are always just a very peaceful reminder of this is a literal pilgrimage we're on.
Yeah, because this is not our home.
Correct.
And someday we'll be at that eternal home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before we came home, our last stop was at St. Mary Major, the basilica there. And that was our final Mass. And once again, who shows up but St. Francis? Because, well, not only is Pope Francis buried there, so got to pray in front of his tomb, pray for repose of his soul. But then the order that runs St. Mary Major Basilica is the Franciscan Order of the Immaculate Heart of Mary.
Of course.
Yeah, you can't write this.
Yeah.
So again, just St. Francis affirming, like, I was with you at the beginning, I'm with you throughout it, and I will be with you on your journey home.
Yeah.
So his presence was definitely felt throughout our entire pilgrimage at that Mass, and as we still kind of see his fingerprints in ways we maybe didn't initially, but we look back and like, oh, you were there with us.
Yeah, and now, like, coming home, I know last week you were like, I just wanted to stay. I didn't want to come home. And we're all like, well, we're glad that you did come home. But that's also the beauty of pilgrimage, is upon returning home, being able to share the stories of pilgrimage. So thank you for sharing with us. But being able to just kind of continue to break open and pray through all of the experiences you had, all of the graces, and just see them continue to bear fruit in your life for years to come, really.
Correct. Well, and in a certain way, too, some of the people you meet on pilgrimage is sometimes the lasting memories you have, which... And again, it was great to see all these historical and sacred sites as part of the pilgrimage. But 2 people I want to give a shout out to was Maureen from Corporate Travel, who was there with us from the beginning when it was at O'Hare Airport. And she had this very calm presence. She never got overly emotional. Like, she was just, when all of us were freaking out, who could we look to but to Maureen? And she was like, even if she didn't know what the next steps were, she was confident enough and peaceful enough, like, we're going to get there. And that was just that constant, like, mantra, like, we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Maureen, for obviously your presence and obviously leading and guiding us. Even myself, I needed at times. And then the other one was our actual guide when we got to Italy, which was Carmen. And she was such a delightful presence. In the way that she kind of switched our itinerary around constantly, trying to get things that we missed out back in. Her joy, her efficacious personality, and just leading us and guiding us and teaching us Italian words, and just making sure every experience was a joyful one and an enjoyable one. So Carmen also left a presence that we're still talking about those two from our trip very regularly. So they also revealed to us just a different face of God and His church in the way they kind of led and guided us on pilgrimage. And even for myself, this is my first pilgrimage, so I hope to not relive some of these things ever again.
Yeah.
But definitely did show me a different side of like what I'm called to as not just a priest but a father. And in certain ways, the Lord says, "I need you to step up here." Whether it was leading people in prayer or inviting them to pray in a certain way, or in certain ways just checking in with them and journeying with them in a personal way on their journey. So I got to grow as a priest, as a father, and again, so many lifelong memories that I will continue to share with others, because while I experienced a physical pilgrimage, it's meant to be almost revealed in other people's lives as well. And I think that is the great mystery and gift of a pilgrimage.
Yeah. And though this was your first pilgrimage, it's not going to be your last.
No,
right?
It is not.
Where are you going later this year?
In October, I will be going to Malta and Sicily. So looking forward to it already, just to share again what the Lord just has waiting for me there, but again to help other people to see a different side of God and walking the steps of St. Paul. Truly a great evangelist, but a man in his own way, flawed, but I think that's how the Lord likes to essentially rewrite our stories with him, and they always end to a happy ending when he gets the final word.
Yeah. And so if you're listening to this, and if we can use the words of the road to Emmaus, if your heart was burning within you and you're getting really excited and hearing Father Liptak's heart and stories from pilgrimage, and you're like, man, I really wish I went, or I want to go somewhere. I want to go somewhere with Father Liptak. You can reach out to him or Robin to get the details on the Malta and Sicily pilgrimage for this fall. But do it quick, because signups are going to be coming out shortly for that.
They already are.
They already out?
As
They're
you're
open?
hearing this podcast, you can go
right.
on the website, or we have flyers in the church or in the parish office. We would love to have you. So we just ask you, please pray about it and see, is the Lord asking me to come here? And if he is, I promise you, it will be a very graced pilgrimage indeed.
And hopefully there's no connections through Chicago.
No, we're already avoided Chicago. So
Good,
don't
good,
worry,
good.
folks. O'Hare is not on the itinerary.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Father Liptak, for being with us today and sharing your heart and your stories from pilgrimage. And before you go, I think there's one question that someone is dying to know that hasn't been asked yet, which is, what was the best meal you had?
Oh, it was in Assisi. No, there's two meals.
You can have two favorites.
Okay, good. My first favorite meal was in La Tierza. It was in Assisi, and it's outside. It's up on a hill, so you hear the bells of the Basilica of St. Francis. You see the entire landscape, because Assisi's on a hill, so you see Assisi below you. The hospitality, the food, and the company were just... It was just peaceful. Like when we talk about restaurants, and that comes from to rest, to be restorative, like that restaurant is very restorative. And I would go back there. I had boar pasta. It was unbelievable. That's the only thing I ever get when I go there. That was a great restaurant. And then at Saturday when we were in Florence, Deacon Rob and myself, we split a Florentian steak. So it was over 2 pounds. Probably the best steak I ever had in my life.
That sounds awesome.
Yes.
For you guys. So that's great. Well, wonderful. So we're so glad to have you back, and glad that you had a wonderful experience.
Glad to be home.
Hopefully, maybe someday soon, we'll make some wild boar pasta to look over the beautiful St. Basil landscape that you can see
probably
from your
won't taste
kitchen
the same
windows.
because I have no cook, but no, I would definitely give it a try.
All right. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, and everyone, have a
Prego.
blessed day. What?
Prego. God bless.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast from our parish. If something touched your heart, we encourage you to take it to prayer. To be notified of future podcasts, please hit that subscribe button and feel free to share this podcast with a friend. We would love to keep in touch. You can find us at basilthegreat.org. Until next time, St. Basil the Great, pray for us.